I just really wanted to give back. I wanted to help with recreation programs or bring in some events for the city. And I just kind of more that community feel is what I was running on, community spirit. I felt like we needed that because we brought in Ironmans and we've been growing all these other events nonstop year round, and the businesses need it to survive. But I'm like, our community needs to bond a little bit more, and St. George City's just getting so big. And so I was like, we need the Dixie spirit, the community spirit,
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I could surely help with any of that. But, and the economic development, that's kind of my favorite thing. But I married a police officer. So public safety, I was noticing over the last few years is a major priority, top priority for me and my family and for officer safety. And so they need adequate funding and budgets need to come first. So I'm like, you know what? I feel like my heart's in the right place. I'm just going to take
a crack at it.
And so I met a lot of people and I learned a lot of what their needs are. And a lot of them are scared. They don't want to have that growth coming in. And then all of a sudden we can't accommodate for transportation, or everyone was nervous about the water. They are all the time. I mean, we've been hearing it for years, but
100 years. 100 years. I think if you go back to the journals, we've been having discussions at City Council about water pretty much
from the beginning,
every year since the beginning.
You're right.
It's never stopped. There's never been a time when the conversation hasn't been top of mind on water.
Yeah.
Like truthfully, like you go back to the journals, you go back to, the historical, records of it. Water has always been a part of the conversation. If it's not, we have a lot of water. We don't know what to do with it, right? The dams are breaking. The dams are breaking, or we're getting flash flooding, and how do we handle it, right? We go from that to we don't have enough water, right? We're always talking about water. Like Southern Utah's always had that problem. So it is funny as the more and more questions I asked about it, and the more and more I learned about it, the more comical it got to me, because it's like this fear that's there's rational fear around it, but then it's like also irrational, because it's this feeling like nobody is recognizing how important this is. It's like, no, everyone recognizes how important it is. It's just how you think it should be handled versus how you think it should be handled, right? Two different people.
Yeah.
There's two different ways to do it. And if you're not paying attention and then all of a sudden you recognize that the issues that have been coming up, then they're like, no one's even thinking about this. I have this amazing idea. You never thought of this.
I heard it all. Heard it all. And I was like, I think for St. George City, I mean, I love what the Water Conservancy District has done in their 20-year plan. And I've watched some other cities like Washington City. They came in and they started putting that meter app. They've promoted that to their residents so that residents were aware of how much they were really using in water. And I'm like, well, we could easily do that here. I just found out with St. George City, though, that it's super costly.
Yeah, it's not cheap.
And so for some of these smaller cities, it might have been a little bit easier to implement, but just slow the flow, right? All those education programs. And I mean, there's so much that we could do just to start off and incentivizing, with landscapes and no-scapes and all the things. I'm like, we just need to start somewhere and then be consistent. And so.
Well, and then you think, okay, well, if you go back in time, they did start. We have started, right? We had lots of different ideas, right? The Lake Powell pipeline's 25 years in the making, right? And so you think, okay, we recognize that we're growing at a pace that, we're going to have to start thinking about these infrastructure needs. So they have, and they did. And they came up with a few ideas that they thought weren't going to be problems, that you wouldn't have the federal government, coming into the middle of the battle and then just saying, no, you can't play that game.
Yeah.
For no real reason. Like, truthfully, there's no real reason around it other than we don't want to. That's legitimately like where it's at with the Lake Powell pipeline. So everybody else was on board. There was agreements across the board. There was pushback from Colorado, but that wasn't until later in the game.
Right.
It wasn't until we've gone through all the environmental studies. It wasn't until we had all the agreements with all the landowners for the entire span of the entire pipeline, right? Where you got to negotiate with the reservations that it goes on and all these other places, right? They went through all this work and effort and energy. And then Colorado's like, oh no, I have a problem with this, or Arizona or Nevada, right? All of a sudden everybody's starting to have a problem with it. And, so the federal government's like, we don't want to deal with it. So then you're like, shoot, man, that was like the obvious, easy answer for us. And now now we got to still go back to the government and say, well, we need your land for a reservoir, but you also got to figure out where's the best place for a reservoir. And, going at the Ivans, they're trying to put another reservoir in Ivans over by Kayenta.
Yeah.
And
that's where you live, yes?
Yep, I live in Ivans.
I'm just wondering when you're going to run for Ivans City, since
never.
You're so knowledgeable now.
Never. I would never.
Really?
I would never run
Tell
at
me
the city
why.
level. Because I think
it's a thankless job.
It's a thankless job, but it also is a job in which you don't win. There's no winning.
It's so tough.
It's so tough, and so. And I hear this quite often.
But we need good people, right?
The best people don't run. And so the question would be, if it was my time to serve because there wasn't another option, like maybe I guess
step up to the plate.
I guess, but at the same time as well, it's thinking, in that service capacity, am I willing to sacrifice at this stage with like my family? Like, sure. I have a young family, the amount of time, energy that the position actually deserves. Like, am I really willing to step up to that when, if nobody's raising their hand, but they're legitimately, every time there's seats up, lots of people raise their hand. So
right.
I just don't see myself in that position. I think also I tend to not feel confident in like just saying like this is the right decision, because this is such a nuanced. All of these things have so many pros and cons, right? And so for me to represent and try to represent the whole community in that way, I don't know if that's. I feel like super comfortable with that responsibility. I guess maybe that's
I love it.
Not a lot of confidence in that, but
I just want to ask everyday people that are educating themselves, that are good citizens, that care because you care.
Yeah.
I mean, your podcast, you've had multiple.
I mean, it's mostly been politicians, but it's also because I'm interested in it, and I do find it fascinating to see all those different moving parts. But like Ivans, for an example, like my wife and I have this conversation all day long. I am okay seeing St. George grow, but I don't want Ivans to grow. Right? I like that we could go get on our bikes and ride around every single street in the entire city and never really worry about
and
like
keep
a
Ivans
car.
The little secret.
Yeah, well, it's not really a secret, but it's like just keep Ivans like a small town that doesn't have a whole lot of water, and there's not really a lot of commercial out there.
Mm-hmm.
And if property taxes are higher in Ivans, I guess that's part of it. But they're also the most expensive city to live in, right? The average price point is $980,000 just for a single family house, right? That's the average in Ivans. So it's already one of the most expensive places to live. But the dark skies, and you have Red Mountain right there, like walking, being able to hike up the face of Red Mountain. I can walk out of my front door, walk up the street. It's about 1.5 miles up the street to the base of Red Mountain, and then walk up the street,
so cool.
walk up the mountain. I just feel like it's something you don't get.
No.
In almost any, and then having St. George just right down the town, right down the road. So you still have like a big enough town.
There are more restaurants and a little more shopping over there.
And so I like that. And I also see it's interesting to see the city council get in the way of economic growth that is part of the general plan. And this is where I really have a hard time is in America specifically, I think has this challenge because of our election cycle and because of the framework that we're set up with, is that a commitment to a 30-year plan or a general plan, a long-term vision of something, especially in today's society, we don't like committing to that long game, right? Yeah. And so Ivans is like, hey, we're going to do resort commercial. We're going to get income coming from, like a Black Desert type, right? They couldn't have asked for a better economic driver for their city where it's all isolated in one place. Mm-hmm. Most of the services and other requirements are coming from the other surrounding towns. It's not, the burden isn't in Ivans. So I think it was really a smart idea and a smart way of saying we don't have a lot of water. Rocky Mountain Power is our power company. We don't want our own power company. We don't want the obligation of that. It's a little expensive, but it's reliable. We know it's going to happen all the time. And we like bigger lots, really nice homes, and a quiet community. We like the dark skies. They put those priorities years and years and years and years ago, and they've driven forward with that as their vision. And if I looked at, because I'm a county delegate, and so,
oh, you are.
Yeah.
Congrats.
So our Ivans 7 is the newest precinct.
Okay.
It's crazy to look at.
That's cool.
I got a download from the Republican GOP the whole list of all the people in our precinct that are registered Republicans, and it says when they registered for the first time.
And what did you find out?
And only 90 of the 700 has registered. So I'm guessing in Utah is where this goes back. In Utah before 2020.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy.
That's crazy. 90 of the 700 had registered before 2020.
Wow.
That's wild. Wow. And so and this is just one precinct in Ivins. We're precinct 7 in Ivins. So there's 7 precincts in Ivins. And so, 1 through 6, that story is probably similar. There's a couple of areas like in that really like around City Hall, like that center of town area. That's probably not the case, right? And maybe a couple of the other, like Padre Canyon is a little bit older and some of these other communities. But I thought it was so fascinating that not only were they just a new residents to Ivins, but they're new residents to Utah, right? They're new Republicans in Utah, like really freshly new. And that really impacts and influences that general plan, right? And so we think of St. George and how do they drive forward? But they still don't even have a general plan. We have this downtown plan that hasn't really been codified and solidified into the downtown zoning. And what's the plan for downtown look like, right? They have they brought on a third party consultant, right, to give them direction on how do they get that.
Some 2040 plan that they
it's not fully codified. It's not fully codified, which to me I'm just trying to understand what is happening. And maybe it has in the last couple of weeks or last couple of months.
Yeah, new council
before
in
this was
January.
during the city council. This was during the race. I should have asked the mayor when she was here last, but I was just so surprised that they had gone through this effort and energy. It was like a 2-year process, and then it still wasn't like officially there. And we need that kind of long-term view because
till they got a new
you get a lot of new
council.
people in,
Yeah.
and maybe they held off. Maybe that was it. But they only got one new council member, so it didn't change a whole lot as to who's on making decisions.
That's true.
So,
very true.